Amy Adams Strunk is a good owner. However, I believe she is not that great when it comes to football operations. Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast for January. For the whole month of January.
Yeah.
For Friday, January 5th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze. Look, we get to the new year and then I don't know how to talk about the dates. I'm your host, Easton Freeze. We are excited to be back at BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse. Once again, JT joining me after a little holiday with the family. Getting back in here. JT, producer JT with me as always. How are you? Are you excited we can finally talk one final time about a Titans game and then mercifully be done talking about it this year?
Excited about being finished talking about the 2023 Titans.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ecstatic to be talking about the 2024 Titans come Monday. Even more so. I'm so ready. But yeah, we're excited to be back here. I know. I don't know. It's just like you said, it is the whole month of January. It's just, at the beginning of every year, it's just like,
I mean, I've only
getting back into the
I've
swing
done
of
this
things.
intro 900 times.
Yeah.
And the fact that in my head, I'm like, oh, it's January now. And then just blank, just nothing. It is 2024. We are excited for a new year, kind of just to cap off 2023, not to like spend 7 minutes being sentimental, but thanks to everybody that watched in 2023. Our show experienced like sevenfold growth from what it was, easily our best year, and month after month all year long we increased. No matter how bad the Titans were, no matter how little there was to talk about in the middle of the summer, we had a fantastic year thanks to you guys. So thank you so much for listening. Hoping to have an even better 2024. I know JT and I are already planning our transition to the off season. Plenty of free agency talk and money for the Titans to be spending. Plenty of draft talk, as our draft coverage is only going to be bigger and better this year. Planning on coming to you from the Senior Bowl, certainly coming to you from the Combine. Going to have even bigger and better special guests on with us, folks that know even more about the draft than we do, and there are plenty of those people out there. Some real experts we're going to have in here on the show. Excited to bring all that to you in the coming months. But for now, we're talking Titans, and no shortage of things to talk about today, revolving around the past week or so of rumors, as our buddy Zach Lyons has deemed it, which I think is absolutely appropriate. It's Vrabel, it's Ran Carthon, it's Amy Adams Strunk we're going to talk about today. I have a lot of thoughts on all three of those folks, and we would love to hear your thoughts on them as we go along in today's episode. Again, it's really our one and only BoomBozz preview show all year long. We've done now 17 of these where we're going to sort of talk about the Titans Jaguars, but listen, that's not nearly as exciting and interesting to you and to us than talking about what this team is going to look like come Monday when this offseason is officially upon us and some decisions have to be made. Some relationships maybe need to be mended, or maybe some will be broken. We're diving into all of that today, and we'd love for you to be a part of that conversation. You can do so by joining us on YouTube. Go to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. That's where you're going to find this live stream. So if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook watching with us live, thanks for tuning in. You'll have an even better viewing experience if you head on over to YouTube, Broadway Sports Media's page. You'll find this live stream, and in the comment section of that live stream, that's where you can join the conversation. We'll be able to see what you have to say. Join Derek and Kyle and Polar and Stoney with the Sobros Network already in here. Appreciate you guys doing that. One last thing, if you're with us live today on a Thursday evening, help us out by sharing the show however you can, whether it's liking the YouTube video, liking the tweet, or the Facebook post, hitting retweet, sending the link to a buddy, whatever you can do to help us get as many live eyeballs on today's show as possible. We would love for you to do that. All right, we're going to tell you more about our wonderful and amazing sponsors here at BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse a little bit later in today's show. And boy, am I excited to be not that we're going to rush through today's show, but I am sitting here rather hungry. Had a light lunch today in preparation for the food that I am about to partake in here at BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse. It's going to be a good time. And even though there's no Thursday Night Football tonight, we are still under contract with BoomBozz through the Super Bowl. And not that we don't want to be here. We do. We are actively hoping to, not to put any public pressure on BoomBozz, we're hoping to continue our partnership with them. We've loved partnering with them. They seem to have liked partnering with us. So hopefully that continues through the draft season. And we get to keep coming here. And we would love for you to come and join us when we're here, even when there's no football to watch. JT, even with no Thursday Night Football, like you got to realize there are other sports going on. There's some great basketball, some great hockey.
It's kind of the biggest thing because since getting into working kind of in the NFL media market,
right,
my love for the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is still like one of the strongest things in my life, just kind of gets pushed down like into the bottom of my of the abyss of my heart. But now that we're getting into the draft coverage, I can have a little bit of time to see how my team is doing.
Rekindle that flame.
Not great, but they're doing all right.
Well, we all feel really bad for you because the Lightning have had a really tough past half decade or so.
I mean, it's tough.
I see a couple of you guys in the comments. Kyle, with the kind words. Y'all do such a good job. I can't believe the audience hasn't grown faster. Kyle, thank you so much. You know what? I can't either. I can't believe we're not already on a syndicated network. But you know what? One day at a time, as long as we continue growing and that arrow is trending up, then I have nothing to complain about. Stoney says he is once again cooking while watching the Hot Read podcast. Love that. He also says, I see BoomBozz in my sleep, and it's all because of the Hot Read podcast. Please tell them that. I will relay that message as soon as today's episode's over. All right, we've got a ton, and I mean a ton, to get into today regarding the drama and the rumors revolving around the Titans. So let's not dilly-dally any further. Let's dive right into the Vrabel, Carthon, Amy Adams Strunk debacle is strong. It's really not a debacle, but it is a rumor mill at this point. Let's talk about what we've heard so far. I know that you've heard this on every show, so we're not going to spend the next 15 minutes going through the baseline facts. If you don't know for some reason, like just scroll Twitter a little bit or go listen to any other show in the market this week. You'll get a pretty good idea. I want to talk about implications, but just some very basic groundwork things. In the past 24 hours, we've heard an increase, and this is not just in the last 24, actually at this point, it's more like 72 hours. It's been this week. We have heard additional rumors regarding the emotional state of the triumvirate that is in charge of the Titans, Amy Adams Strunk, Ran Carthon, Mike Vrabel, in particular, Mike Vrabel's happiness with his situation as head coach and the control he may or may not have in that building. We've heard a lot about that. We've been hearing, this is not new, obviously, if you've been paying attention to the Titans, these rumors have been trickling out for a couple of months at this point. But it's really picked up speed here at the end of the season, as I think is natural. It's easy in the moment to get really caught up in the, whoa, why are all these rumors flying at the same time kind of thing. This, just from a 10,000 foot perspective, this is kind of the nature of being a borderline top 5 pick in the upcoming draft, end of a wire to wire brutal season, no joy to be had. People are upset that and the rumors are going to fly and a lot of things are going to change. And so you're going to get a lot of these things. So that's natural. But there have been things that we've heard that you can tell based on context clues are coming from the New England camp. And there are things that you can tell based on context clues that may really be coming from the Tennessee camp. So we're going to do our best to try to differentiate between which is which. I will say in general, you have to think about intent, purpose. When things get out in the NFL, an age-old adage you hear from anybody that knows what they're talking about when it comes to the league, things only get out when somebody wants them out. There has to be intent behind the leaks. And so with New England, the intent is pretty obvious. With Tennessee, there's more to dive into there. But just to run through some of the things that we've heard from a handful of nationally respected folks, Dan Graziano, Jeremy Fowler, Jason LaConfora have all talked about this. Chad Forbes, who is an online NFL draft guy who, not to spend 5 minutes on a total segue, but folks have been talking to me this week a little bit like, what's the deal with this Chad Forbes guy? He's got a big following online. He says some pretty strong things that are sometimes true. And you're like, how did he know that? I'll tell you in 1 minute what Chad Forbes is. He is somebody that is pretty well connected in the NFL and consistently overplays his hand. I have nothing personal against him. That's just the reality. A couple of things he said this week that really got kind of the pot stirring, I think, with this newest wave of rumors. 2 tweets he sent off. He said, first, Vrabel is basically making it known to ownership. Pick between me and the GM you hired 11 months ago. Clearly lacked a shared vision. It was an arranged marriage by Amy Adams Strunk in coordination with the league office. Vrabel wants his guy, and he deserves it. In a following tweet, he said, fact is, Mike Vrabel has proven himself enough in the league to dictate the organizational structure. He'd get complete Sean Payton-like control from multiple organizations if available. contract status is a bit cloudy, but a power play is underway. Mike wants out of Tennessee. Bold, strong statements, things that go along with the rumors you've heard, but you haven't really heard it packaged like that. And that sent people into a bit of a tizzy. I'm not saying these are examples of him being wrong. And again, he says some things. He's keyed in with agents. So like he occasionally, especially when it comes to the draft, gets things right that nobody else gets right. True. He also has a long laundry list of examples of things he has said online that are outlandish and ridiculous. I mean, I think 3 years ago, he had a very famous tweet about how he said he had it on like airtight authority that Odell Beckham Jr. was going to hold a press conference in the middle of the season to come out as the NFL's first active gay athlete. Was out of nowhere and definitely didn't happen. It's that kind of thing where he does that from time to time. Again, constantly overplaying his hand, if I had to guess, just for clicks a little bit. So I'm not a huge fan of what Chad Forbes has to say. Even though he is occasionally right, he is also occasionally super wrong. Okay, now that I've gotten that out of the way, it adds to a growing list that has already been coming out from trusted media members in past months. We've heard from Charles Robinson, Jason Fitz, who was on Jared Stillman's show, I'm not a huge fan of Stillman in general, but I am a fan of Jason Fitz, and I like when he's on the show, and it's absolutely worth going and listening to Jared's show to hear the hit from Jason Fitz this week. He said a lot of things that I think generally he's very plugged in and a responsible guy. He's worth listening to. Chief amongst them, talking about how a lot of people he talked to said Vrabel will have to learn to work with Carthon, and about 50% of the sources he talked to thought Vrabel wanted out, and 50% thought he didn't. We've heard from Greg Bedard with the New England media, Ben Volen, and then our buddy here at 440, Braden Gall, has had some thoughts that are on good authority. I can tell you from speaking to him behind the scenes, some things that he has on good local in the Tennessee building authority. So that's the groundwork of folks we've heard from. A lot to unpack there, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire. General sentiment absolutely applies. I think we can no longer, because we on the show we've addressed it a little bit, but we've not spent, a show each week talking about the minutia of the newest rumor or, this here or there. Like,
I would say it hasn't been this big since the Bedard incident.
Yes.
I think so.
Yep.
Like, this is the first time again it's kind of reared its ugly head. And whereas that was more of the first time with Bedard, that was more of the Patriots.
Who is this guy? Where's he hearing it from?
The Patriots were in kind of the worst low of their low season there. So that's where you start to see that stuff. And now as we're on the footsteps of Black Monday after week 18, it's totally fair, like you said, to see these things pop up again. And I think now more than ever, it's eye-opening to see that it's both kind of Boston and Northeast media, and then also national guys who are kind of connected with these executives and agents and stuff, also saying the same things and then also contradicting each other.
Well, and that's a double-edged sword here, because I think it's important to make it clear when you hear things along the same lines from a host of different people who you trust, that's disconcerting and worth paying attention to. At the same time, when it's so similar and in such, close succession, I think you absolutely have to wonder, okay, are they all getting this from the same source? Is this guys stacking on each other's reports? One guy says it, I've got a bigger audience. Let me amplify that. I've heard the same thing. Let me amplify that. I've heard the same thing. It's been a lot of the exact same thing that we, again, have heard for months, phrased differently. So maybe it's coming from all sorts of places and there is a fire. The house is on fire. It's not just smoke. But it's also perfectly possible that there is one chief source or two chief sources involved here, and you got a little bit of a groupthink situation, and folks are all just reporting kind of the same thing. It's the injury report coming out on Friday, and all 19 of us in the Titans media pool who get the email with the injury reporter sending out the same thing. Like, it's all the same thing. I'm not saying it is, but you have to wonder if that's the case. I need to clarify something here. The one inarguable fact in all of this is that there is this is number one off the top before we dive into the details. There is no world in which firing Mike Vrabel is not a horrendous, disastrous decision for the Titans. That's not a. Folks are like, do you think they're going to fire Vrabel? No, they're absolutely not going to. And if they did, it would be insane. He's so clearly and obviously, whether you are a Titans fan that is his biggest fan or his biggest detractor, He's so clearly and obviously in the grand scope of the league and with other teams has serious value as a proven commodity head coach. That's so much value. And the Titans can't afford to leave that on the table if they were to part ways with him. It would have to be a trade or nothing. That's the bottom line in this. And the person I think most likely to trade for him, because they've made it incredibly clear just how badly they want him, is Robert Kraft. And you and I were talking about this last night. Like, what does Kraft think bringing in Vrabel is going to do? And at best I can tell, I think Kraft's broken boomer rationale here is replace Bill with younger Bill, give him the same amount of power, have him draft a quarterback with our super high draft pick and get his guy, get our new Tom Brady or whatever he thinks is going to be, and then run it back this-ish 1v6 rings, like profit. Like that seems to be, I mean, what he thinks is going to happen.
Because like it just makes no sense to me. I feel like even if you look at these two teams, the Patriots and the Titans objectively, it's going to a team where, yes, you are in this grand scheme of things, you were just inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame.
Sure, they love you.
In that circle. They love you, but you don't really have a great connection with the players. Sure, you can go get, maybe you'll be able to go get a Caleb Williams, Drake May, or even as he starts to climb up people's lists, Jaden Daniels. You could go get that guy.
Well, and again, can you? Because again, you have to trade for the guy.
Exactly.
That's the whole, why would New England think trading
we'll get into that
asset? Yeah.
It seems just counteractive to, okay, if you want the power all to yourself in New England, you're going to have your assets just not be as great as they are here currently in Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do we want to take it now?
I'd like to say, where do you stand on this right now as to, obviously the team that would want him is the Patriots, and he is someone who is very much being sought after. Like you said, if there is enough smoke here, obviously he's held in high regard from a bunch of different teams. So like, where are you right now? Obviously you've said that there's no scenario in which you would fire him, but like,
what do I think is going to happen?
What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, I am at the point now where I still, gun to my head, I'm expecting it to be Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon operating with all of the assets this team has this offseason. I think that in 2024, it's going to be those two guys most likely. But I am also at the point now where if it's not those two guys and it's a different coach situation, I wouldn't be surprised. Like that's where, and somebody on Twitter was giving me a hard time. Like, wow, great take. Not a take. I'm just saying I think it'd be irresponsible I think anybody that's saying they know what's going to happen here is being irresponsible and trying to get your goat and trying to get your clicks. We don't know right now. We're going to find out a lot more in the coming weeks. Let's talk about Vrabel's presser comments, because that was something where we had this whiplash of, oh, look at the Chad Forbes comments. Dan Graziano's getting in here. Jeremy Fowler's like, what's going on? Everybody's saying, and then Vrabel steps to the podium on Wednesday and he says a series of things that we're not going to play the video. You've probably heard at this point, but he says, quote, "Of course I want to be here." Talks about how he wants to be the one with Rand and the other assistant GMs, Anthony Brinker and the group, building this roster in the offseason, spending that money, making these draft picks. He wants to be here, and he wants to be here as long as he can win. And it's just been a tough season. A lot was made about that because first of all, I'm glad that it was asked. Terry McCormick asked that question, I believe, first, or started us on that topic. And it bared asking on that day. I will say definitely can rest assured now that ends all the rumors, because no coach has ever told a lie ever and in the history of stepping up to the podium. But like, I'm not. Do you remember the Josh Rosen thing with Cliff Kingsbury a couple years ago when they had Josh Rosen in the building in Arizona and they had the first overall pick and it was Kyler Murray's on the board, and they asked him like the week of the draft, almost, who's going to be your guy? And he says, quote, "Josh is our guy." And the Cardinals put out a graphic, like a pretty "Josh is our guy," Cliff Kingsbury. And then 7 days later, I mean, Josh, I think he's a Dolphin and you're drafting.
Yeah. you could kind of see that happening right now with Ryan Poles, with Justin Fields and them having the
absolutely
pick. Like it could be the same thing as well.
You should.
And that's the point, right? As a coach, he can say those things, but Do you think that that's always going to be the truth? No, just because of the guys that he has in his locker room and where he is right now in this season, they still have unfinished business, which is one more game left in the 2023 season. And he's not going to create any more distractions than he needs to for his guys in the locker room.
And I saw folks saying, well, it's important to know, folks that wanted to buy into this as confirmation that Vrabel's staying. It's important to know, yes, he could have deflected, because a lot of folks are saying, well, usually he answers that kind of question that's very forward thinking in the season by saying, I'm focused on Jacksonville. I'm focused on week 18. We'll talk about that after. Yes, he could have gone that route. But I think there's a great clip. Our buddy Zach Lyons put this on, at least I saw it from him first, on Twitter earlier this week. Go find it at FWordsPod on Twitter is his account. It was a clip of Nick Saban when he was the head coach of the Dolphins, and he was being sought after, courted by the Crimson Tide. He was doing an interview after he had made the move to Alabama, after he had bold-faced lied at the podium before saying, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to college. I'm the coach of the Dolphins. They asked him, like, why? Like, what's the rationale behind that? And the skinny of it is he's saying, I've got to do what's best for the team who I'm currently coaching. And putting to rest any distraction like that, any worry about me as the head coach, that's what's best for that team then. That's what that's what I owe to the players then. At the time of being asked that question at the podium, he said, the answer genuinely was, I'm the coach of this team. I want to coach this team. And then suddenly the answer became, okay, now I'm going to go to coach Alabama. Because with Vrabel at the podium on Wednesday, he may very well be telling the God's honest truth. He wants to stay in Tennessee. He wants to help rebuild this thing. But it eventually becomes, in a week and a month, it eventually becomes true that Robert Kraft and the Patriots or whoever it may be presents him and the Titans with an offer that changes the math. That, that doesn't exist yet. Then it exists. Suddenly, okay, it was true then that I want to rebuild this thing. It now is true that I would rather take this better offer. That's something that can change and become even more for him and change that math, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that perfectly sums that up. And I think, Logan, I think we get to a point now where we've talked enough about the Vrabel situation and at least the rumors right now. And at least Logan brings up a good point here, and we can talk about Ran Carthon a little bit, but most to least likely in your mind, Ran out, Vrabel out, both stay.
Least likely is both out. They're not both. They're not both being fired or traded.
But more to that point, what do you think if you had to choose between Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel right now, which one goes and which one stays? Because, I mean, through various different sources of media this week, I think we both agree. Like, I'm just going to jump the gun here. I don't think Ran Carthon should be out, but it has been brought up so much.
I don't think that's a thing. I think that's objectively, there's no reason for you to fire
Correct.
Ran Carthon that is justified.
Correct.
There isn't. To answer Logan's question specifically quickly, most to least likely, or I'll go least to most likely. Least likely is they're both gone. Then Ran out, then Vrabel out, then both stay. I still think it is slightly, those last two, again, it's like 49%, 51% right now, Vrabel out versus both stay, but I do think it's both stay right now. The general question you asked of which would I choose between Ran and Carthon, because that's what it has sort of become now with fans online. Like, okay, if you had to pick one, are you team Ran and Vrabel by the wayside, or Vrabel needs to stay and Ran needs to do whatever it takes to keep him and mend that relationship? I do not want Mike Vrabel gone. Some folks do, and some folks who I respect. I was talking to Zach Lyons last night, and he is like, he said he's out on Vrabel. Sorry if that's spoiling backyard information inside baseball, but like, he did say that, and I think he's going to probably say that next time he's on the air. That if he had to choose, he'd be out on Vrabel. I'm not on that train right now. I just want him to coach. I want him to let the front office do their job and him do his job. And a lot has been made about Mike Vrabel. It's a power play. Chad Forbes saying there's a power struggle at hand here. This is a power move. He wants the power. Does he want to become Bill Belichick? Does he want to become Bill O'Brien when he was with the Texans? The God King of the Tennessee Titans, in charge of personnel, in charge of the coaching, in charge of all the football operation decisions. I have a really hard time believing that, man. I don't think we've actually had any actionable evidence pointing to that being the case. And I also just refuse to believe that Mike Vrabel is dumb enough to think that that's a good idea. He's not a dumb man at all. he's a smart guy that knows the league, and surely I have to think he knows, man, this has never worked. No human being really has the bandwidth to excel as a coach and as a personnel guy. It's not possible. That's not to say that he couldn't be good on the personnel side. I don't know. But as long as he's busy coaching, he can't do the other thing. And I don't think that's what he wants. Maybe he wants a bigger say, but the full control, or an outsized amount of control, I'm not really buying that in general. Where are you on this?
Yeah, personally, I think I'm with you. I would rather them both still be here. However, I've said this a couple times now in the past week and a half. I was thinking about buying my ticket.
Have you purchased the ticket?
I've purchased the ticket on the not the Mike Vrabel should be fired train or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
Could he not be on this
maybe.
team? As I've said
train.
this entire time, that is the train I'm trying to get on. I'm not trying to take the express all the way out of town. I'm trying to get from point A to point B right now. But the possibility could make sense on multiple different aspects. First of all, trading Vrabel, obviously, that is, if you were going to let him walk to a different team, you are going to get assets back in return. Now, I think that these have to be substantial aspects. And from what I think maybe a third or something like that. Of course, I know a lot.
You mean in addition to a first?
No, I don't think he would get a first.
You don't think he'd demand a single? I think you're crazy if you think he'd demand a single third. I think people are overblowing the Sean Payton deal is the floor.
Well, no,
I pump the brakes on that. Sean Payton has a ring, folks. And to be clear,
why,
Payton got a first and a second. That was what that deal was.
I think I'm asking for at least a third. I need more probably, but if it doesn't involve that, because of where this team,
you need to pick as high as no lower than a third as the premier portion of the. Okay.
And I think because of where this team currently kind of sits right now on day 2 with just having no capital on that day 2, I think that's where you'd want to land. But I want to talk about that real quick because as Logan says, there's no way he wouldn't get a 1.
That he wouldn't. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of with Logan. I mean, maybe I'm just missing this. I think that maybe a 1 is like a 1 and a 4. I don't think that he'd get the full Sean Payton first and a second. But I think it would involve a first and a later pick, or maybe like a pair of 2s,
and here's
a pair of 3s.
I did some research earlier today
on coaching
on
trades?
Just coaching trades,
Sure.
and the biggest ones are one, the Sean Payton one. The only 2 to ever demand a first is one. The Sean Payton one.
Was that one
is
Gruden?
A guy. The other one was Gruden.
Okay.
First one, Sean Payton, a Super Bowl caliber winning guy.
Been doing it for
a long time.
Yep.
And the other one was John Gruden, who was the hottest coach in the world at that point. He had taken the Raiders to 2 straight playoff appearances, and then also had a record of 20 games over 500 with that Raiders team. And eventually, when he went to the Buccaneers the next year or two,
they won a ring. Yeah.
I just don't see right now that Vrabel. That's it. That's the only 2 that the others have
demanded a first.
Yes, Bill Belichick has done that.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one that's.
I was listening at this earlier in the week too. There's been 4 or 5
blanking my
trades.
mind. Who went from Indianapolis to the Colts or something like that, Indianapolis to the Chiefs. There's one there.
There've been a couple,
but they have not brought in
that big of a haul.
Big of a haul.
So you're kind of changing my mind a little bit here. I think folks. I was already going to say folks maybe are overvaluing what Vrabel would get. Maybe they're really overvaluing what Vrabel would get based on history. Again, it all depends on because
obviously the Patriots could reset history.
What do we say when we get
very much wanting Vrabel?
What do we say when we get to trade draft season? Is all it takes is one team willing to give you that. All it takes is one team all it takes is the Titans willing to give you AJ Brown for a single first and a third. Like, sorry, that's the first one that came to mind. All it takes is one. So you're right that maybe his market is diminished, but it really does only take one team. Can we move on? We've been at this for about a half hour, and we haven't mentioned Amy Adams Strunk yet. Sure. I have a lot to say on Amy Adams Strunk, who in this I think, man, if you had a bingo card of Easton says Zach Lyons' name on his own show like 4 times, then congrats. I think this is the 4th time I mentioned him. But the reason I keep mentioning him is because him and I had a 30-minute conversation last night via text that was a really great conversation, and he changed my mind on at least one thing that we're about to talk about, but it helped me organize my thoughts on this. And I wasn't sure how I was going to come into the show and talk about these things. So shout out Zach. I appreciate you and looking forward to what he has to say on this on the 440 Podcast Network on Monday's show on a football show. So check that out. Amy Adams Strunk is a good owner. However, I believe she is not that great when it comes to football operations. And I think it's starting to really rear its ugly head a little bit. I know our buddies Stoney Keeley and Braden Gall talked about this a little bit on a football show today. I'm going to expand a little bit on what they were talking about. The first question I want to talk about is going back to the hiring of Ran Carthon. Did the league put any pressure on her to make that hire? That's been talked about quite a bit in these rumors in general. About how it's an arranged marriage between Ran and Carthon. The league was puppeteering this match, and Vrabel didn't have nearly as much a say in it, and that's why they aren't getting along so well. I've had folks DMing me about this. Like, first of all, did the league do that? Second of all, if they were doing that, why in the world would Amy or any owner go along with it? What's the incentive, right? The incentive is the new stadium. And this is something that I didn't actually know this. I don't know how I didn't know this. This had slipped my mind at some point, or I had missed it entirely. The Strunk family and the ownership group of the Titans is putting up the majority of the money for the new stadium. But the NFL also chips in on that. I don't know how I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Zach helped me out on that last night. How much they do or don't chip in is up to them. And so when they come knocking, when you have a GM opening and they're like, hey, here's a list of guys we think you should check out, you check them out. And when they say, we really think you should hire this guy. And, oh, hey, by the way, just recently, your organization was mentioned in a lawsuit involving the Rooney Rule. And here's an African-American man in Ran Carthon who is very qualified. We don't have a ton of minority folks in front office positions in this league, and we would like to change that. And we think that you should really, really consider him. You really, really consider him when that happens. And so that, again, we've said this since the day Ran was hired. This is not to say that he was not qualified or is not qualified. I think Amy Adams made a very good decision in hiring Ran Carthon. It has nothing to do with whether he's white, black, or purple. I think he's very good at his job. He knows ball and he knows how to evaluate players. I have been impressed with the job that he has done so far, and I was impressed when he was hired with his track record. But that's one thing that plays into a bigger topic of Amy Adams' process maybe not being so good while she's been getting good results. Process versus results. That's where I'm going to build up to here. But some more minute details to dive into. This has been mentioned a lot, and it's true. You look on TennesseeTitans.com. You look at the folks employed by the Titans. Look at the folks that are in her inner circle of operations, the C-suite guys. She doesn't have football operations guys in her inner circle. Her second in command is Burke Nihill, very good businessman. Who's Burke Nihill? He's the guy that has facial hair that's like a circle around his mouth, and you can't see his mouth. It's distinct. You know what I'm talking about. Very good businessman. Doesn't have a background in football ops. None of the folks in the C-suite do. And that lends itself to Amy, who herself has been around football her entire life, growing up with her dad owning the team. She's been around it, but she's not been in the football in particular. She's great with the front-facing stuff, the promotions, the new stadium, the branding, the general direction of the business. All of that she's very good at. And she's good at the thing that I think most owners are kind of shaky on, and it's for my money, the number one thing that you want in an owner, somebody that's going to let you do your job. It's going to back off, not going full David Tepper, you got to draft my boy Bryce Young, not going full, hey, my name is Jerry Jones, and I'm going to run everything because I run the team, and I love to be in front of the camera and make these decisions. Like, those owners, typically, the meddling owners, doesn't work out well for you. I love owners that generally operate like Amy Adams Strunk does. I'm going to hire my guys. I'm going to say, go do your thing and let me know how it goes. Just give me updates. Otherwise, it's up to you. That's great. But where I've shifted my thinking on Amy Adams Strunk is this. She's been getting some good results with her big decisions she's made lately. but it's been bad process. And this is how Zach kind of changed my mind a little bit. Last night we were talking about the firing of John Robinson. And I said, I think she's done a good job. For example, the firing of John Robinson. She did that earlier than those of us in the media. We were not calling for it. I don't think fans were calling for it. People were starting to sour on like, is John really the guy? But no one was like, fire him now. And in the middle of November, she said, you're out. I thought that in hindsight, that was the right time. I liked the timing of that. Got to get ahead on the search, got to kind of shuffle some things and be prepared for the draft season as best you can for a new guy, all these things. Zach's retort was, he said, I think it was kind of a reactionary thing. I think it was got embarrassed in Philadelphia, got embarrassed by the A.J. Brown trade. That following week was when he got fired, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a reactionary decision. I said, well, I don't care how it was thought out, whether it was reactionary or not. The result, and it's important. But if you got a good result via bad process, the root is still rotten, right? Another example would be hiring Rand. Hiring Rand, I'm pretty sure you think, good result, good choice. He was the best guy, in my opinion, from the pool of final candidates. I think he was a good hire. You can certainly argue, however, that the process may not have been very great, as evidenced by the fact that she may have been pushed into it by the league. She didn't involve Mike Vrabel until the final round of the candidates being interviewed, just the last three guys. She didn't involve him until then. There's some weird things there where it's like, I don't know if that process was very good. You got the right result, but you kind of backed into it. Maybe you lucked into it. You got there through the back door, but that's not super great in terms of indicating future results. Like, bad process in general eventually is going to reap bad results. So that leaves us with one question, right? Like, what does good process look like on the current mess? I think perhaps the argument is, in general, to wrap up all of what I just said with a bow, she's not a great owner, specifically when it comes to navigating uncertainty and turmoil with football leadership, with football operations. To be fair to her, I wonder how many owners would be or are. I'd wager not many of them. She's great at most of the things I mentioned, right? The front-facing stuff, staying out of things. But ironically, in this instance, and I found this hilarious when I came to this conclusion yesterday, you always hear about, well, hands-off owner is the best owner. You don't want a meddling owner. Ironically, in this instance, her throw Mike and Rand in a room together and tell them, boys, figure it out. That tactic has now backfired her in one of the only instances of a hands-off owner getting themselves in trouble by being hands-off. How often do you encounter that in the NFL? I mean, isn't that crazy?
That's very rare.
Yeah, no, but it's crazy to think. And she's also very new in the grand scheme of being an owner. Some other things, just some notes on this that I had written down. In her defense, she's not super new. She's not had a ton of time to learn and not be in this mess in the first place. And that's because her former general manager was aggressively bad at his job. If he was not aggressively terrible in those final years, she wouldn't be dealing with this awkward situation of trying to pair a new GM with an established coach, and an established coach in particular who's the type to want to accumulate control. That's a really unique storm in the NFL that she's handling, I think, not that great.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard, I think, to continue to be.
And that was a lot. Did that make sense?
I think it makes sense, but to me personally, you have to wonder, like, when, because it was at the beginning of the season, it was a lot of like it was huge on collaboration. It's just very interesting to see how fast that has deteriorated. And it's like, is that all on Amy Adams? Like, is that on her? I wouldn't think so. I think
no, I don't think it is.
And that's where I'm getting.
The boys aren't getting along.
They're
but
not
she has
along.
To be able to step in and do something, because that's where this conversation is ultimately taking itself, right?
Yes.
Like, what is she going to do, and does that line up with what she should do?
Yes, and in that aspect, I think it's really hard, because I think a good analogy of this right now and why it's so hard is because Amy Adams Strunk essentially said, "Okay, Mike and Rand, I'm sending you to the." She's leaving the casino, right? And she said, "Okay, Mike and Rand, I'm down $500 at the casino right now. I need you guys to make my money back and make it back fast." And she walks out of the casino and hands Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthen two $25 chips in those chips being this last season and the assets they had.
Right. Good luck.
And so,
figure it out.
Of course, it's going to bring high tensions because you bring a guy who has historically been so good as a coach with some really good players and in a really good team. And you put this new guy in here who is going to have a lot of success, I think, in the future, starting with this year's draft, as I think it's one of the deeper, if not the deepest drafts that we've seen in the last 5 years. Like, if they can just get through this season, I think things would be a lot better going forward.
Folks in the comments, thank you for correct. I just made a very funny error. I described Burke Nihill as Steve Underwood, the Titans' former president. The reason why Steve Underwood, the unmistakable facial hair guy, he was in the press box 2 weeks ago saying, I guess he was just saying, hey, because he doesn't work for the Titans anymore. And that picture was imprinted in my mind, and I got the two mixed up. You're totally right. That's not the facial hair guy. Way less descriptive a human being.
You've seen him
I'm now picturing the right person.
Yeah.
Listen, we don't talk to those guys ever. I'm sorry, like my bad. But totally, yes. Okay, so let's finish this, and we'll talk a little bit about the Jags and the Titans in a minute. Let's finish this on what she will do versus what she should do. I am one of the few things I'm confident in this entire conversation. I don't think she is going to initiate anything in terms of movement. Now, she should initiate a sit down with her fellas and have a marriage counseling session that she moderates as soon as the season, sometime next week, season's over. Boys, let's sit down, let's chat, let's hash this out, let's figure it out. But in terms of moving folks, like is she going to try to look for a trip? No, she's not. No, she is not. I think she's ultimately hoping that she can just kind of say, y'all figured out off-season time, woohoo, good luck. And they just kind of work it out themselves. I mean, that'd be ideal for her. If she handles things poorly or perceived to be handled poorly, it's going to be because Mike forces her hand, which is on the table at this point, because we've heard folks say he may want to be out, folks who I trust. If that's the case, he can't actually force his way out. He's under contract. Let me reiterate. He can't force his way out to somewhere else in the NFL. He's under contract with this team. Despite what you heard mistakenly from folks earlier this week on Twitter that his contract is up this season. No, it's not. We don't know when it's up, but it's not up this season. I think it's 2 more years, but I'm not certain. Okay. So he's under contract. If he wanted to go coach Pee Wee football or college football, he could do that and just break his contract and eat the buyout or whatever. He can't go coach somewhere else in the NFL on his own volition. He can sort of force his way out by saying, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. You better trade me or else you don't know what's going to happen, but it's not going to be pretty. Things are going to be rough. I don't think that's going to happen, but he certainly could. And if she does make a rash, next Tuesday, we're talking about there's a trade that already it happened that quickly. That's going to be why. 100% that's going to be why. It's not going to be because the Titans want to trade him. I know that they don't want to trade him. But if he wants to be traded, they may be forced in that way. In general, I can't help but wonder, JT, if things had gone differently this season, if we'd be having this conversation at all. And we started this entire thing talking about how this is natural for teams in this position with a joyless season, with a lot of things to figure out in the offseason, for there to be some turmoil, for there to be rumors, for folks to be unhappy and potentially want out. Winning fixes everything, man. Winning, folks have been asking me, how does this get? They're like, maybe you keep him this season, maybe, but still, it seems like this is a broken relationship. How do you fix it? I don't see how you fix it. I say you fix it. You turn that trending arrow from straight down to straight up. You start winning, and everything can be cured in the NFL and in professional sports in general by winning. Now, long term, maybe the relationship between Rand Carthen and Mike Vrabel, which I think at this point is being a little bit overplayed, as to how much they don't like each other. I think that they like each other just fine. I think they just butt heads a little bit and need to figure out how to work with one another. Long term, maybe that's not repairable. Long term. Maybe there's no fixing it, and the next time things start trending down, it actually implodes. But if they survive this offseason, and really, I would say the next month or two, because it's not going to be one of those things where, they've spent $50 million on a couple big free agents and we're a month from the draft and suddenly Mike Vrabel is traded. I think it's going to be pretty soon in the process.
Or not at all.
Or not. Maybe not. But do you see a world in which it's March, well, maybe where it's May, June, July, and Mike Vrabel's traded after they've done all these things to this team.
Certainly would bring back the idea that the ownership and Amy Adams Strunk is practicing bad process.
Right. Yes. It would. It would be. It would be.
If they want to do correct process, it would have to be earlier in the offseason or not at all, in my opinion.
But I'll finish all my ranting with this, that if they survive this offseason and they start steering this ship, it starts heading in the right direction again, which it's not been doing for like 2 full calendar years at this point, I think it'll be fine. And like I said at the top, my final judgment on it as of today, Thursday, January 4th. I think it's going to be both of these guys next year. I think they're going to figure it out, but you have to consider all possibilities at this point because things have gotten a little bit messy. Any more thoughts on that before we move on to the Jags Titans?
I think
final call. We can move on. Okay. Let's talk about the Jaguars and Titans, who are playing a football game this weekend. They are. You got some stats for us that I spent so much time preparing my thoughts on all of that. I was like, hey, can you help me out? What were the things that you found interesting about this game statistically?
Yeah, and we can talk about this Titans and Jags game and maybe ending the season on a better note with an actual W in the win column finally.
Well, we know the team certainly wants to.
Yes.
We buried maybe, well, not the biggest, but the second biggest lead of the week, the Mike Vrabel rant. Poor Gentry Estes, man. He's getting so many. I'm not seeing anybody stand up for Gentry. Gentry doesn't deserve some of the flack he's been getting because he got caught in the Vrabel viral video crosshairs. I saw on Pat McAfee today, and they don't know Gentry Estes. He's a good guy who I know, a good writer. He asked a question that was, I probably wouldn't have asked it, kind of bland, but certainly not crazy. And Vrabel just kind of, it touched a nerve, and that happens, baby. Sometimes that happens, and you get caught, and I'm sure Gentry knows that. But I'm standing up for Gentry a little bit. But that Vrabel quote, that rant about winning effing sucks.
Or losing. You want to win.
Winning is awesome. Losing effing sucks, and explained all the reasons why they want to win, which all tied back to because losing sucks. If that doesn't convince you that this team's not laying down for this final game, I don't think you're going to be convinced.
Yes. And so let's talk about a couple of keys to the game through some stats that have kind of had these teams, the trends of the past couple of weeks for these teams. And I think the first one is to not let the Jags get off to a hot start and kind of stifle them in the offensive side of the ball here. The Titans defense has allowed scores on 29% of opponent drives in the first half since week 14. It's tied 10th best in the NFL right now. So they are for what it's worth, this Titans defense is, like we said, bend don't break. They are not allowing them to score on a lot of drives this season. However, the Jaguars have scored on 16% of their drives in the first half since week 13, the second worst in the NFL. So
slow.
It might be imperative of this Titans team to get out to a hot start, put some points up on the board, and kind of try to build a little bit of a lead.
Well, they've actually managed to do that a couple of times this year. The problem is they have a nice drive or two, and then they just take the rest of the game off. They're going to have to do a little bit of both.
And that brings me to my second point, where the Titans must score in this game. The Jaguars are 8-1 when allowing.
You must score to win football games. Thank you, JT.
The Jaguars are 8-1 when allowing less than 22 points this season. It's eighth best in the NFL, and the Titans are currently averaging 17.3 points per game this season, fifth worst in the NFL.
That doesn't seem to align very well.
No, it does not. So whether it is Ryan Tannehill or Will Levis, either one, they're going to have to throw the ball early and often, get Derrick Henry and whatever they can out of this run game going, and put some points up on the board.
Wolf, a bonus stat from Logan in the comments. Since the Green Bay game on Thursday night, over a year ago now, the Titans have scored on 4% of their drives. I don't know if that's touchdowns. I'm assuming that's just scored in general. But that's not many.
Yes.
That's not many drives. That's not many drives.
And then finally, the Titans need to stuff the run and force it over the top, because the Titans have allowed 3.9 yards per carry to running backs this season, which is tied for fourth best in the NFL. And the Jaguars are averaging 3.5 yards per carry this season, which is tied second worst in the NFL. I totally thought it was made up.
Here's the thing. Comedy, the best jokes are rooted in truth. And that's funny that Logan made it up, he says in the comments. It's funny because he might accidentally be true. Now I'm going to, after the show, go look at what the actual number is.
4% would be like 10 times.
Of all of their drives. I don't know, man. There have been some games where they're running like 12 drives and score once.
Okay, maybe.
Maybe not 4%, but I
No.
bet you it's single digits. I'm gonna go look.
Okay.
Logan, I hate you. Once again, reason number 10,000 why I hope one day this service we use allows us to kick out specific people from the chat and we can block Logan. Let's derailing us entirely. Let's talk about the rooting guide for the Titans in week 18. Our buddy Justin Graver over at Titans Film Room on Twitter and the Music City Audible podcast here on the lovely 440 Podcast Network has been putting together these rooting guides each week. This is the simplest one yet so far, folks. And we talked a little bit about it earlier in the week, I think. But for the Titans to get their best possible pick, which is the 4th pick, they currently sit at 7th. They can go as low as 8, as high as 4th. That's the window they're working within here in this final week. As long as they lose to Jacksonville, which some of you will be rooting for, I'm sure, they will be guaranteed 7th or higher. If they win, they'll be 8th, barring some serious help from other teams. There are 3 other games besides the Titans-Jaguars game that impact their positioning. Arizona and Seattle, you need Arizona to win that game to bump up the rankings. Giants and Eagles, you need the Giants to win that game to bump up the list. And Chargers-Chiefs, you need the Chargers to win that game to bump up the list. As long as the Titans lose, they will move up 1 spot for each of those wins between Arizona, the Giants, and the Chargers. Very simple. However, there are some strength of schedule considerations, some tiebreakers with the following results you should be looking for, because there is a way mathematically that the Titans can win and still get ahead of the Chargers. So Jacksonville over Tennessee is important. Kansas City over the Chargers is important. This is for, I know it's contradictory. This is important for strength of schedule. Buffalo over Miami, Dallas over Washington, Baltimore over Pittsburgh, and Arizona over Seattle. So the Titans, if they win, are probably 8th. They may could jump back to 7th. If they lose, they move up for each one of those losses. But even if they lose and the Chargers also lose, I believe there is a strength of schedule way for them to move up, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So keep it simple here. You're hoping for a loss by the Titans, the Seahawks, the Eagles, and Kansas City. And later on in the news, I know JT's going to tell us a little bit about the odds of some of those games going the right way. You'd be surprised with some of those matchups based on folks that may or may not be sitting out. Actually, I've got it right here. I'll just go ahead and read it if while we're on it. The Chiefs earlier this week announced that they're going to be resting their players in week 18 because they've locked up the 3 seed. They have nothing to play for. So you got my namesake, who's not very good at football, but we're counting on him this week. Easton sticking the Chargers at home. They are actually favored by 3.5 points, I believe, in this game. That'd be great news. I know we've also got some things in the best bet gauntlet later. We're going to talk about how the Eagles may also be incentivized to not play super hard against the Giants. I don't know. What was that third game? Cardinals, Seahawks. Both those teams are going to be playing hard. You just got to hope that the Seahawks lay an egg. We've seen them not play well the last 2 weeks. They almost lost to the Titans, and they did lose to the Steelers. It's possible. So I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that they get 4th. Based on those 4 games, just off the top of your head, JT, right now, let's just for the fun of it, what's your guess as to where they end up at the end of the day Sunday in the draft order? They're currently at 7th.
I want to say 6th.
6th?
Yes.
I'm gonna maybe this is the optimist in me. I'm gonna say they end up 5th. I'm gonna say they get 2 of those 3 results and they lose to Jacksonville, but we will see. We will see. And we've got some implications with those games in the best bet gauntlet coming up. We did not forget the best bet gauntlet. Of course, we're going to talk about that before we get out of here, but we also have the news with producer JT to get to. Before we do any of that, real quick, let me tell you, like I promised, about BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse. 3 locations here in the Middle Tennessee area. They've got East Nashville, Murfreesboro, and here our home location in Spring Hill. Fantastic place to go and watch sports. Fantastic place to go and grab a bite if you don't even care about sports. My mom and a buddy came out here for one of our shows a couple weeks ago. She didn't give a rip about sports, but she had a great time because she loved what they had to eat and drink. You will love it no matter what your interest is, whether it's sports or food, or in our case, both. And they have awesome local and domestic options on tap, as well as a phenomenal menu of pizza, multiple time award winners with their craft pizza making. You'll come and you'll have a pizza that you have never tried before, but you will love. We know the brisket pizza here is one of our favorites. My favorite is the green chili chicken pizza. As far as I'm aware, I don't think there's a bad pizza on. We're yet to hear or personally try of don't really touch. No, it's all of them. They're all pretty good. So come check it out here at BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse, our wonderful sponsors. We love BoomBozz. Okay. JT, we've got some news for us starting, as always, on a Thursday with the injury report. Who's in, who's out? What do we got?
Yeah, let's talk about the guys who did not practice today once again for the second day in a row. First of all, Colton Dowell, who goes on IR with that ACL injury.
Man, and that sucks.
Really unfortunate.
I think ACL and MCL, I think he tore both.
Either way, he was the Titans' best special teams player for my money's worth this season.
Low bar.
So really, really tough break for him.
Non-kicker.
I guess. That is true. That is a big caveat there. Joining him as well, not practicing today, cornerback Anthony Kendall, along with TK McClendon. Another two guys who did not practice today, both Daniel Brunskill and Jalen Duncan, who Daniel Brunskill once did win the award for the...
I know. You and I were talking about this like a month ago,
yes.
And he was like our third dark horse option. I was surprised that he won, but not to say that he did not deserve it. Can confirm from the time that I've spent in the Titans locker room. I mean, I've not spent as much as others, but I've been in there plenty of times this season. Good guy, great guy. You can tell. I'll be shocked if he's not a coach or a GM one day. He's very well spoken, very thought out, very, very good to talk to when you need a quote. Good job, Daniel Brunskill. I hope that he's an element for this team next year because I think he's good enough. And I personally, selfishly like to talk to him in the locker room.
And then the biggest injury news here for the Titans this week, Will Levis was elevated to limited in practice today. Obviously, we can't tell until tomorrow with the injury report, but if you had to guess right now, which quarterback would you see out there for the Titans?
I think it's going to be Ryan Tannehill. Our buddy, I don't know if you saw this, Nick Suss, our friend over at Tennessean, he's not a huge Twitter guy. He occasionally posts, and when he does, my ears perk up because usually it's something funny or witty. He posted a couple pictures today from practice, and it was just, I think it was titled Will Levis Feet Pics. It was pictures of his feet. If I had to describe them in a word, the word I would use is tape. Lots and lots of tape, whole rolls of tape on those bad boys. Apparently, from folks that were there, I know our buddy Sam Phelan and Paul Kaharski both said this. He wasn't moving super great, but he was out there in a limited fashion. It'll be telling tomorrow. I know he wants to play, and I know this team wants to win. But part of me wonders, even if he could gut it out and go, do you say, let's pack it in this season, right? Like Ryan Tannehill, let's send him out there. Like one last ride for Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, potentially. We don't know, but potentially. I think that makes too much sense. Wouldn't shock me if what do you think? Are you thinking there's any chance Levis plays?
I mean, there's always an outside chance, but I think I'm with you. Obviously, you've tried it once, right? You got him back healthy.
You saw how that went.
And we saw how that went. He goes down with injury once again. So yeah. I think you let Ryan
Tannehill,
new
injury, too. Yeah. Well, he had one. Did you hear at the podium this week him talking about how, what sucks? Having an injury on both feet. Because you don't know how to limp. You don't know which side to favor. It's just the last thing we need is a third Will Levis limb to be injured. Like exactly. A shoulder injury. We can't have it.
I think at this point, it's just not worth it. Let's give Ryan Tannehill one last hurrah here at Nissan Stadium.
I hope if he plays, first of all, malpractice if the Titans don't announce the offense coming out of the tunnel. Second, I really hope fans give him, because he is easily, no question, 1,000% the second best quarterback in the Titans non-Oilers era. It's Steve McNair and it's him. The team in his primary 3 or 4 years with the team, or primary 4 years with the team, when he was healthy, he was 30-13. Did a lot of winning with Ryan Tannehill. Played a lot of really fantastic football with Ryan Tannehill. Averaged 28, 29, 30 points per game for season-long stretches with Ryan Tannehill. Give him a big standing ovation if you're in that stadium and he gets to run out and they announce his name one last time as a Titan, because this will be the last time he's in Titans two-tone blue. I really hope that he gets the warm welcome he deserves on the way out.
And let's talk about the biggest note here on the Jacksonville Jaguars injury report. Trevor Lawrence, who practiced limited today, that puts 2 limited practices back-to-back here. And from James Palmer, he heard today that Lawrence was officially limited in practice, but he was told he looked pretty good throwing the ball today. But the Jaguars will continue to be smart with what's best for Trevor, as they do need to win this week to get that final win to win the division as well.
Well, if they win, they win the division. If they lose, there's no losing in for them as far as I'm aware. I think that, is there one?
I believe there is a way.
Where they could be maybe a low wild card.
If the Steelers end up losing,
okay,
Jacksonville could sneak in.
Okay, but the point is the odds are low. They're pretty much in a win and in situation. Mm-hmm. If they lose, they have a high risk of missing the playoffs entirely. And that's, what the Titans are hoping to do for them.
Yeah, let's move on now to talking about Derrick Henry here, which it is his 30th birthday today. So happy birthday to
King.
him. And you brought up an interesting thread earlier today about just looking at as this may be the last game for Derrick Henry, talking about his Titan.
He's going to keep playing football, yes. Folks.
But looking back at his career so far and the case for him to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and I'll run this down really quick because I know we're kind of short on time. I just ran through Pro Football Reference has a great tool called the Hall of Fame Monitor, where you can go on at each position. It lists the current Hall of Famers and potential future Hall of Famers, gives a bunch of different numbers for you to compare. But in particular, it gives you the average numbers, the average statistics for current Hall of Famers. So basically the average benchmark of current Hall of Famers, the thing you're trying to get to be considered. And with Derrick Henry, I basically took all those numbers and compared Derrick's current numbers to the average Hall of Fame running back numbers. So here they are. All pro first ballots. The average Hall of Famer has 3. Derrick has 1. Pro Bowl nods. The average Hall of Famer has 6. Derrick has 4. Years starting as the primary back on their team. The average Hall of Famer has 10. Derrick now has 5. Games started total. Average Hall of Famer has 137. Derrick has 87. Total attempts, the average Hall of Famer has 2,500 and change. Derrick has just over 2,000. Yards, average Hall of Famer has 9 yards shy of 11,000 total yards rushing. Derrick has 9,350, essentially. I'm rounding there. And then total touchdowns, the average Hall of Famer has 86. Derrick has 89. So there's a lot more that goes into being a Hall of Famer than raw statistics, but I find these interesting. Some of them, I think, are a reflection of different eras of football. Years as a primary starter, for example, Derrick's not going to get close to 10. He's at 5 right now. Like, nobody does that anymore. Nobody is their primary starter for a whole decade. That's just not the way that football teams operate anymore. That's no fault of the back. The Pro Bowl certainly is not what it used to be. Doesn't mean a whole lot anymore. As for all pros, that may get him. I'll be interested to see how much that may hurt him. I can remember at least one season in the past in which Derrick, I felt, was really snubbed for the all pro first ballot. He does have 2 second team all pro nods, which for what it's worth is important. The average Hall of Famer's played 50 more games than he has so far. I'd be surprised if Derrick, that's 3 more years, essentially. Yeah. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play another 3-ish years. And if he runs at in terms of total yards and carries, if he runs at half the efficiency he has so far in his career, so literally half the guy he was the past 5 years, for the next 550 carries, which is what he's shy of the average number of total carries for a Hall of Famer, he would get north of 10,600 career yards in roughly 2,500 total attempts, which would be just shy of on par with that Hall of Fame status. So we've made this case on the show before. I think it's actually the non-pure statistical things, the more advanced numbers, the more narrative driven. How many years were you at the top of your position? How can you write the story of the NFL without this guy? It's those things that I think solidify his case as a Hall of Famer, but those numbers are interesting to me.
Finally, let's talk about the offensive line one more time this season, because I'm so glad.
I feel we're going to be talking about them on Sunday, but we can call it one last time.
The last time previewing this offensive line, I guess. Let's talk about 2 stats here, which these are good. Keep them in your brain for next year. These are 2 good ones to see how.
And they go hand in hand.
They do go hand in hand. Okay. How this team has fared this year and what to be looking for next year, and seeing if they are able to improve right now. Currently, in terms of teams and how often NFL offenses leave their offensive tackles on islands, so leave them out to defend for themselves, do not give them any other help. The Titans currently have the second worst or the second least percentage of leaving them on an island, just over 50%, almost tied with the Minnesota Vikings.
Which is a weird way that this chart is framing it. In other words, there's only one other team in the league that helps their offensive tackles
as
more.
Much. Yes.
Right. The Titans are at the top of the list of helping tackles on every snap. However,
when you look at the tackle tandem pressure rate, so
they're helping them a lot, so surely it's successful, right?
They are not at all. 25% of the time, their pressure rate is 25%.
Where does that come in the league?
It's dead last.
Oh, is that where the next closest guy is 21%?
Yes.
So almost a full 4% worse.
Yes.
The fact that those things can coexist is there aren't any more. I'm running out of words. It's genuinely impressive. That may never be accomplished again. I'm pretty confident it's never happened in the modern NFL. I don't think it'll happen again. It's amazing.
Yes, I agree. And that's going to do it for our news today. I think we should get to the best bet gauntlet now.
Let's get to the best bet gauntlet. Records wise, heading into our final, we're going to bet to the playoffs. And last year we were very profitable in the playoffs. So I'm looking my chops. Probably going to change the format a little bit. I haven't even talked to you about this, but last year we only did 3 picks a piece on the actual, like each week. Based on our success with props in the past, I'm going to lobby to maybe just keep going with the 5 and 5 and just throw some props in there. I think we can do it. I mean, what do you think?
We'll see. We'll see. We'll talk about it.
We'll discuss it. We'll discuss it. A little pillow talk tonight before bed. That being said, this is our final week of the competition. And if you look at where things are, I'm going to need a little miracle here at the end. The bell, I have not heard a bell. There's been no bell rung. However, I am sitting on the year at 52-39-4. JT, you're at 57-34-3. Showed you were human last week. It was I can't believe this. It was your first 1-4 or worse week of the year at week 17. That's really impressive. I think I've done that 2 or 3 times this year so far, even with a winning record. You finally had a tough week, had some things bounce the wrong way, and yet I actually
went 2-3 last week. I had the Raiders and the Packers last week.
Oh, did you go 2-3?
I did.
Oh,
so I haven't gone 1-4.
Well,
or low.
Okay. So, well, and you just let me say all of that before you.
I had to think.
You really wanted to. Okay,
I had to think in my brain. I
so
promise.
Is that reflected in this record?
Yes.
Okay. So just kidding. He went 2-3. So what? Even better. You're so. I wish you'd gone 1-4. Could you give me a little bit of a cushion? The point being, you're 57-34-3 on the year. As a show, which is the most important thing, we're 109-73-7, 59.9%. Really fantastic. I have no complaints with that whatsoever. Very proud of that. But in order for me to catch you, and I think is this to win or to tie?
It's just a tie.
Just so I could tie it.
We could tie
force us into extras somehow. If I went 5-0 and you went 0-5, but as previously stated, you've not even gone 1-4 yet, and I've not gone 5-0 this year. You've done that twice.
Correct.
So okay, whatever. So you're gonna win, but I'm not throwing you the party until we get to that.
That's fine with me.
That being said, for like the 3rd time all year, you get the first pick of the week. So what would you like to take off the board?
Yeah, my first pick of the week and my lock of the week. It's Baltimore +4. Hosting.
You told me pre-show. Put your mortgage on this.
Put your mortgage on this one right here. Baltimore +4.
Sponsored by LifeLock.
Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers here. This is one where I really think, yes, even though the Steelers need to win this game, and we've talked about some key starters that probably won't play in this game. Lamar Jackson won't play in this game. Some wide receivers. I don't foresee Zay Flowers or OBJ playing in this game.
Right.
Maybe a couple of offensive linemen and maybe some guys on the defense like Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton. This is still probably one of the better, if not the best teams top to bottom,
Very deep
roster.
Team.
It is a deep team going up against Mason Rudolph and a squad that I think this is the top of the market for them. Let's not forget that the quarterback that will most likely be under center for the Ravens is former Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley of last year. So it's not like they're getting a huge drop off here. And really, this is just an automatic bet for me. Ravens are 20-4 against the spread in their last 24 games as an underdog, including 20-5 against the spread since 2018. Second best in the NFL in that span, just behind the Steelers, actually. But when Mike Tomlin and Harbaugh meet, the underdog is 23-5-3 against the spread. That's an 82.1% hit rate right there. Almost automatic in these cases. I'm taking Baltimore this week.
Well, and I would hate this bet if last week Mike Tomlin had already not already fulfilled his obligation to the universe to get to over 500. Yeah, he did that, so he doesn't have to win this game.
Yep.
So that you'd probably be dead as a bettor if that was the case. But you can take that one. I think that is a lock. Absolutely. My first pick of the Week 18 Best Bet Gauntlet. I'm taking, in the words of Joe Biden, Minnesota +3.5. They are at the Detroit Lions. This one is as simple as they're playing in the late window. Unless both Philadelphia and Dallas lose their early window games, Detroit is locked into that 3rd spot in the NFC. They will have nothing to play for. Now, we know Dan Campbell is a gambling man. We know that he is a risk taker. We know that he is a hard-nosed football guy, trademarked, copyrighted. However, I don't think he's a moron. I don't think he's going to risk his high-caliber players out there. Minnesota coming off of a beatdown on prime time last week. Always just licking my fingers at teams coming off of beatdowns on primetime games because there's that personal embarrassment element of let's clean this up and make ourselves look better to end the year. Is Minnesota eliminated? I don't think that they
have a 3% chance.
Right. They have a very outside chance. Obviously, that involves winning. You got Nick Mullins starting again in this game. Lions, like I said, likely to have nothing to play for. A number for you on this. Road dogs off of a loss of 20 or more points, which the Minnesota Vikings are 61% ATS. Giving me the hook here. Give me Minnesota plus 3.5 at Detroit.
Yeah, I really like that pick. With my next pick, we did good. We did good. 17 out of 18 weeks, we took one side of the Titans game.
That's most of the weeks.
Last week, we didn't, which was interesting because I was just bonking myself on the head.
I was too. Why did one of us not take the Texans?
But I digress. So we're getting basically the same spread here this week.
Mm-hmm.
And are we going to bonk ourselves on the head again saying, why did we take the Jacksonville Jaguars? No, we are not doing that. We're taking Tennessee plus 5.5. You can still currently get this line on Caesar Sportsbook. It depends on whether Trevor Lawrence or Will Levis or anybody plays. I expect this number to go back up and probably meet the middle ground of like a 4.5
probably.
For sure.
I'd grab it now.
But I'd grab it now on that book if you can and have an account. This is the most classic Mike Vrabel spot I've ever seen in my entire life. The narrative swirling this week, this team having nothing to play for, and finally having a revenge narrative where they can, in their own stadium, ruin a Jacksonville Jaguars season by beating this team.
Right.
It's really just that simple that when you finally think this team is out and has nothing to play for, Ryan Tannehill's possibly his last game, Derrick Henry possibly his last game, this team is going to want to put everything into this game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I still
there are
think
incentives, by the way. I don't know if you saw this. DeAndre Hopkins playing for $1 million if he gets 7 receptions. Arden Key said in the locker room today that he's playing. We don't know what his incentives are, but he said he's playing for incentives. These guys, it's empty the bag season.
It is.
Play calling wise too. I mean, we've seen the Tim Kelly trick plays. That bag is clearly deep. Why are you not? You're emptying it in this game. You're trying to spoil for the Jaguars.
I agree. And I think that, Mike Vrabel has been just so good against the spread at home as an underdog, covering by at least 4 points. You're giving me 5.5 right here. It's too good for me not to take. I'm taking Tennessee.
The most interesting thing about what you just said there at the end, I'm with you on this, obviously, but just to add to this handicap, this year, anecdotally looking into this slate today, I was like, man, the whole Vrabel at home as a home dog, or just at home in general, that was really a strong trend early in the year.
Season,
now I'm like, it's not as much. Let me see what it is now. He's 4-3 on the year. ATS, favorite or underdog. Those 3 losses were all to playoff hopeful teams. 2 of them were in overtime, and 1 was on a last-second touchdown by the Seahawks. So it's been by the skin of his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times this year that I has bet the Titans where we were going against probably what the pro consensus is based on what we see on the Action Network and looking at different indicators, just because we have more faith in this team than the pros did. I think this is the classic case of my heart is telling me, what are you doing? Like you said at the beginning, like at that Texans game last week, like maybe this is a nightmare decision. But the pros, I don't know if you've seen this week. They love the Titans.
Yep.
So we're, if we die, we die with them.
Yep.
With my second bet in the week 18 best bet gauntlet, I'm taking the G-Men. Give me Ty God once again. Tyrod Taylor leading the Giants. They are at home against Philadelphia. This is also a week 18 kind of game theory pick. The Eagles have nothing to play for as long as the Cowboys win their game. Now, they're both playing in the early window at the same time. The Eagles have floated this week. Nick Sirianni earlier in the week floated the idea that it's not, I think he said the specific quote was, it's on the table for us to rest certain guys in this spot. There's a chance they can win the division if the Cowboys lose, but the Cowboys are, I think they're now two full touchdown favorites against the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Odds are by halftime, they're going to be monitoring that game. The Eagles are going to be monitoring that game. If the Cowboys are murdering the Commanders at halftime, they're already a pretty banged up squad. I don't know if you've noticed, like Jalen Hurts has not been super right a lot. I think the report last week was that Devonta Smith left the locker room on crutches and in a boot.
Yep.
They've got some banged up guys in there. And the Tyrod Taylor-led Giants is a team that generally I like. I heard somebody today describe, I thought this was perfect. Tyrod is a 19 blackjack hand. You're not positive you're going to win with them, but
you
you feel like you got a pretty good shot no matter where you are in the game. And so he's a great backdoor coverer. I think that he's a nice one to always ride with, and you got that backdoor channel. There's also in this game bad weather scheduled, and they're going to be playing that on that evil MetLife turf. So there's an increased injury risk that I don't think the Eagles and Nick Sirianni want to expose themselves to. For all of those reasons, you're giving me 5.5 points for the Giants to cover against an Eagles team that maybe rested starters by the end of the game. Give me Tyrod and the Giants.
Yeah, with my next pick, I'm taking Houston -1 at Indianapolis in that showdown Saturday night. This is really a bet on me just kind of showing my rooting guide as to who I want to win the AFC South right now.
Who's the better team?
I think they're also the better team as well. I'd rather also see a CJ Stroud in the playoffs right now than a fraudulent Gardner Minshew in this team.
I agree.
This is really simple to me. Even though CJ Stroud has not done well as a favorite, they have the better team up top to bottom. And I think this one really, really comes down to which quarterback messes up. Is it the CJ Stroud who explodes under pressure, or implodes under pressure, I guess is the correct term there, or does Gardner Minshew just do normal Gardner Minshew things? Mm-hmm. I think it's Minshew doing things that hurt his team, and I think Houston gets out of here with a win and secures their spot in the playoffs because I think they've earned it this year. So I'm taking Houston.
I'm on this side with you heavy as well. It's important to note that the Texans got pretty much as close to a rest week while playing a game last week as you can. Like they didn't playbook, very vanilla in the second half. Mm-hmm. Guys, a player on that team that's really heating up in the past month or two, Will Anderson Jr., played just 12 snaps. He's going to be fresh, by the way, on those 12 snaps. 12 total snaps against the Titans tackles. 6 pressures, so half of them, and 2 sacks. Not bad. So I'm with you on that one, absolutely. Oh, and one last thing, just to really twist the knife on Colts fans that are coping right now with the fact that their team is like not going to be a great playoff team if they make it. The Colts are number 2 in the luck rankings this year. So they've been extremely lucky. A lot of breaks. With my third pick of the Week 18 Best Bet Gauntlet, I think I'm 0-2 with this team this year. It's time to make it 1-2. This is the time. I hate it. It's gross, but it's the play. Give me Carolina +4.5 at home against Tampa Bay. It's disgusting, but we know this is a trend. I meant to mention this at the top of the Best Bet Gauntlet for future reference, folks. Since 1990, eliminated teams playing teams who need to win over the final 2 weeks of the season, they are 164-4 against the spread, 61%. So this is the Panthers against Tampa Bay. That is one of those situations. Tampa Bay win, they win the division. Lose, they're out of the playoffs. Carolina playing for their pride. This is every team that's eliminated. You know what Week 18 is? It's their Super Bowl. That's
but
Week
18.
But
it's not like the Panthers have a pick or anything.
That's
in the first
a great
round,
point.
So it doesn't
Zero
matter.
incentive to help the Bears out and get an even better than first round pick. That's not happening. So you're absolutely right. I was looking at, because these two teams played relatively recently. I was looking at the last time they played. They met in Tampa just a couple weeks ago, and that line was Tampa favored by 3.5. Now Tampa is on the road favored by 4.5. And in that game, Carolina covered. Carolina lost by 3. They covered 3.5 on the road in Tampa. Now they're 4.5 home favorites. And sneaky trend, they've covered in 3 straight home games, the Panthers have. Speaking of luck rankings, by the way, Bucks top 5 in luck rankings this year. Carolina is dead last. Carolina is also dead last in terms of rankings in this game. The handicap here, they're dead last against the run. The Bucks can't run, so cool. Yep. Last thing, Baker and Bowles. We've talked a lot this year about why we're not picking New Orleans, and we're often picking against New Orleans. Is because, man, if you're looking at ATS spreads, against the spread trends for the coach quarterback situation in New Orleans. How about this one for Baker and Todd Bowles as favorites of more than a field goal? They are 29% and 30% against the spread. Not great. So I'm taking Carolina +4.5 at home against Tampa Bay.
I'll go to the other NFC South matchup.
Just going to cover the whole terrible division.
Let's cover it again, and I'm going to use.
We've covered all of both of the worst divisions.
And
by the way,
this
is betting, baby.
This is betting. This is my take on the NFC South.
Okay.
If the underdog is over 3, so if you get the hook 3.5 or more,
auto bet.
You auto bet them.
Okay. Nobody deserves over a field goal.
No one deserves under a field goal, and that's exactly what I think happens. this week as well. I'm taking Atlanta, currently +3. I think the hook comes back, so I'm
It was
waiting
3.5 all week until today.
I think it comes back, so I'm going to take 3.5 here. I think Atlanta's going to win this game outright. This is a classic. In this rivalry, it gets closer than 3 every single time with these two teams. I think Atlanta has a lot to play for. Arthur Smith's job may be on the line in this game. They still have a shot to get into the playoffs if Carolina can pull off an upset this week.
Maybe coaching for his job, by the way.
Yes, and I think that this is both teams that are coaching for their jobs, but I think top to bottom, this Atlanta team has the better offense. I think they have more guys equipped on defense to take care of Derek Carr's weapons, and I think either way, this game is going to be under a field goal, so I'm going to take the underdog. That gives me a field goal and a hook. But if not, I'll take the push. That's fine.
Yeah, push is that's the only risk there. With my 4th pick of the week 18 best bet gauntlet, my squarest bet of the week easily, I'm taking Buffalo -2.5 at Miami. The fact that you're giving me under a field goal for Buffalo to cover as a favorite on the road in Miami, where I actually like that they're on the road a little bit. You're not going to have the weather impact here at all. It's going to maybe it ran. I've not checked. As far as I'm aware, it's going to be a nice, cool evening. Hope maybe cool, not terribly hot evening in Miami. I'd imagine this time of year is like, 70 degrees at night or something in Miami. So it should be perfect football weather out there. And I think Buffalo is just the better team here. The Dolphins, they lost both of their primary pass rush producers in the last 10 seconds. Weird side take from me here. I don't think Mike McDaniel, who gets a lot of praise and rightfully so, I don't think he got nearly enough crap this week for the decision to play Bradley Chubb, your primary stud edge rusher, when it was Tyler Huntley and like the entire backup squad in for the Ravens, who were up by 3 scores midway through the 4th quarter last week. He tears his ACL, done for the year. No idea what he was thinking. Terrible decision. But now they're without both of their star pass rushers. I don't know where that pass rush is going to come from. That defense is going to struggle because of it. You've got some like outside things. Tyreek Hill's house caught on fire this week, which is terrible. But that's a whole thing where he's distracted. The team may be distracted by that. Like, Buffalo has been on a mission for a month and a half. I don't think they fall apart here at the end. I think they win this game. I think that, Vegas is telling you I think that they have the 3rd best odds to win the Super Bowl right now.
They do.
And they're not locked into the playoffs. They may not make the playoffs. I think Vegas thinks they're making the playoffs. I think Vegas thinks they're going to be a 2 seed. I think they're going to be a 2 seed because I think they're going to win the division by winning this game. Give me Buffalo -2.5. I think they win by a field goal or more at Miami.
I think I'm with you on that one. And my final pick here, I'm taking the Los Angeles Chargers -3.5 versus Kansas City in a game where Blaine Gabbert will be
the Blaine train. Titans fans know what that is.
He will be quarterbacking the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think you brought up a really good point when we were discussing these before the show. If Patrick Mahomes has been struggling with his receiving core this season,
surely Blaine Gabbert's going to figure it out.
Blaine Gabbert with even worse receivers, I don't think he's going to be able to get it done.
I don't think
this is a pride spot exactly at home for the Los Angeles Chargers wanting to get that win. I think even with the hook right here, I feel pretty good about this bet. There's a lot of guys on this Chargers team who have something to play for, and I think that's going to happen in this game. So I'm going to take the Chargers -3.5.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. My 5th and final bet of the Week 18 best bet gauntlet. The final bet of the competition this year in the regular season. Give me Cincinnati. Let me hear those Bengals. What is it? Hear those Bengals roar? What's the thing?
Growling.
Hear those Bengals growling. That's what needs to happen for me this week. I think Cincinnati -7 versus Cleveland is a big number, but I think it's the book trying to scare you off. Genuinely, I do, and I'm refusing to be scared off by it. Yes, it's a big number, but Cleveland has nothing to play for. They are locked and loaded into their spot in the playoffs. They're going to be resting every guy on that team that makes the magic. No Joe Flacco, no Amari Cooper, no Myles Garrett. That entire stout defense is probably going to be taking the week off, if I'm guessing. And because of that, I think that a good Cincinnati team this is their Super Bowl. They want to finish the season with a winning record, which they can do by winning this game. Their backup, Jake Browning, not like serviceable. You can win games with him. He's done it this year. I think they win this game in this spot against a Cleveland team that was already pretty stretched thin. Part of the miracle story here has been like, man, they're doing it with guys 3rd, 4th on the depth chart, and they're looking really feisty for the playoffs. They're already stretched thin. They're going to be without their now starters, former backups. Like, they are not super deep at this point, and I don't think that their depth players are going to put on a good show. I also think this number could come down if I had to wait on any of these bets we made this week till game day. Wouldn't be shocked if the square public comes in and is like, oh yeah, gonna really pound Cleveland here, giving me a whole touchdown, give me Cleveland. It may come down. If it does, I love it. But even at 7, give it to me. I like Cincinnati -7 versus Cleveland at home there in your home city of Cincinnati. All right, that is our final best bet gauntlet week. Let me recap the week 18 slate for us. JT rocking with Baltimore +4 at home against Pittsburgh. Tennessee +5.5 at home against Jacksonville. Houston -1 at Indianapolis. Atlanta +3 at New Orleans. And the Chargers -3.5 at home against the Chiefs. I've got the Vikings +3.5 at the Lions. The Giants +5.5 at home against the Eagles. Carolina +4.5 at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buffalo -2.5 at Miami. And Cincinnati -7 at home against the Cleveland Browns. That is our best bet gauntlet for week 18. And that is our very, very lengthy show today. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Do us a favor, hit subscribe if you're on YouTube. Check out BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse, wherever you are in Middle Tennessee. Help us out by following the Hot Read Podcast on all social medias, on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. The handle is at Hot Read Pod for all your show updates and content announcements. 700 subscribers on Broadway. Let's get to 1,000 by the end of the draft. I think that's possible. Come on, guys. Let's get that number up. If you subscribe, it's very helpful to us, and it's free to you. It's very, very nice how that works. It is also going to help you get our shows in your feed more often, which if you're listening to us at the end of this hour and a half, clearly you like it. So check it out whenever and hit that bell notification if you want to be notified when we're going live. Until Sunday afternoon, we'll be going live between the late, I'm guessing we'll go live between the late afternoon games and the evening game, recapping mercifully the final game of the 2023-2024 year for the Tennessee Titans. Logan Grady finishing us off today. Best BoomBozz podcast, or best podcast in BoomBozz history. Yeah, nice. I'm good at speaking. Thank you, Logan. I appreciate that. After you bamboozled us earlier in the episode, everybody enjoy your weekend. Find a way to enjoy Titans Jaguars. We'll talk to you on Sunday afternoon.